Hello, and welcome to a very special Hobby Outline, edition 189. I'm Danny Black, joined tonight by Cousin Oz and Ryan Nolan. We are coming out of the bullpen tonight. John, we're going to wish him best of health as he recovers and gets better. How's everybody's doing tonight? How you doing, Cousin Oz?
I'm doing great, man. First time on here, so I'm a little bit not seasoned like you veteran guys, but we're gonna go ahead and handle it today. So let's get it cracking, man.
All right. Have you been to any shows lately since the Philly show?
Since the Philly show, no. So the Philly show was the last one. You were there as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we didn't meet up. We were supposed to. I don't know what happened. Did you ever get a hold of Cousin Tony? Because I got there late.
I'm not going to blame it. I heard some people were at the comic side, but
well, yeah. There was, we did a little episode on there, for the Cousins Collectibles podcast, but it was primarily we started with the RetroCon side first, and then we made it over to the Philly show. But unfortunately, like I said, we didn't get to hook up that day. But yeah, that was the last show I was at.
Now, Ryan, I'm jealous. I saw you were at the Las Vegas card show.
Yep, I go to shows every weekend.
I know, but I got stuck at the week before at the Industry Summit card show, which was terrible. So how was the actual card show the week after?
I mean, the promoters do a good job, like designing the show and everything like that. Like in general, it was a more of a modern show than it was vintage. It's like 90% modern, maybe 10-15% vintage, if that. So I prefer going to vintage shows over modern because that's what I tend to buy. But traffic this weekend was like so, but it was across the board to other shows as well. I mean, I was talking to friends over at Midwest Monster and they just didn't have traffic either. So I think it was just like a bad card show weekend, just unlucky on that side of things. But like they did a good job like putting it together.
Well, two questions. First of all, how many tables roughly?
About 250, I think.
And I know there was Comic-Con going on and a bunch of things around the country that were kind of related categories. Do you guys think that had an impact on the card show turnouts?
I mean, the Midwest is in Indiana and then Nevada as well. So they're far away from New York Comic-Con. I could see that happening. The problem is like what's happening in the hobby with card shows is you have too many national card shows in the same weekend. And also people in the state level are throwing too many local shows. So like, for example, let's say there's only one show last weekend between Midwest Monster and Las Vegas. There's a lot of dealers that flew to either Las Vegas card show or the Midwest card show. Like I'd say probably 30-40% of the dealers that set up at these large shows are from out of state. So if you factor in like all those dealers that flew in and threw them into one card show and then also the buyers, because there are a lot of people that fly into shows just to do buying itself as well. Like if you put all those people into one show, like the card show scene looks like it's booming. But the problem is like over the last year, 2 years is now it seems like every single week a brand new show is popping up that's 300 tables. And that takes away from everyone. I mean, there's a few weeks ago, there's like 3 or 4 shows going on that were all 300 tables. I think there was the Burbank show, there was Colorado, and there's a show in New York, I think, and another one in Chicago. They were all like 200 plus tables or something like that. But the problem is like, because you have all those shows, now all the collectors or dealers are now segmented. Also, you throw in the factor that since it's the fall, now you have school starting, parents have their children that are in sports. So instead of going to a card show on Saturday, they're playing with their kid at like travel baseball events or travel football, or they have football games at their high school or whatever else. It's going to distract them from going to the card show of things. And I mean, also with the economy going down, people have less money to spend at shows right now. So there's like a myriad of reasons of why the card show scene kind of looks like it's dying down a little bit. Local level, I mean, in Florida, we have 7 or 8 shows in one weekend. Like just there's shows that are literally 10 minutes away from each other just because the two owners of shows want to argue about getting dealers. Like, think about that for a second.
That's
10 minutes.
I went to a local show. It was a first-time show in the D.C. suburb, Southern Maryland area. Great part of town. But it was thin. I think especially with Chantilly next weekend, like Ryan, I think you're right. Everybody's getting spread a little too thin, dealers and customers.
That's 100%. I mean, there's no reason why, like living in Florida, I can go to 3 card shows on a Saturday.
Yeah.
That should not be the
Right.
like.
And I agree. I mean, for the Philly show, for example, I mean, I'm not sure, Danny, to me, it seemed a little weak, the attendance. I know it was in a bigger area, so it's kind of hard to tell.
So
But
I've had this conversation. The official word is the numbers were up, but
okay.
the building was an absolute optical illusion. It felt very empty. No argument.
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured, because next door, like I said, they had the RetroCon, and that line was all day long. It was crazy the amount of people that were walking through those doors. And I'm talking to cousin Tony, like, yo, this is crazy the amount of people. So there was, it was cross pollination where, some people that were over at RetroCon were going to, the Philly show. But for the most part, like you said, when you walked in, it was so big that it didn't look as packed.
Okay, so I guess one of the things we want to talk about that's seems like every day a different grading company has been lowering their prices and making better offers. First of all, does this change for you guys how many cards you submit? And does it change which companies you would submit them to?
Absolutely. I mean, like for a prime example, I literally just got my PSA sub back in from the national, at least the modern side, not the vintage yet. But a lot of these cards, I would have never submitted if the grading cost was over $20. Like I was hesitant on $18 grades, but like I did the math on it for a 9. If I could sell a card at $20 or $25, you break even. If you get a 10, whether it's like a $50 card or a $75 card. So I'm going to take that chance if I think a card's going to get a 9 or a 10. But if it's at $30 and now I know the card sells for $20, I'm not going to take a $10 loss in every card to hope to get a 10 on it. Like using math and writing out numbers and probabilities, it's just not worth it because first off, you're losing the cards to move right away. I mean, you could sell cards a little bit cheaper than a 9. I mean, it depends on each different type of card, but like modern cards, you can sell raw a little bit less than a 9. So is it worth getting the 9s and losing extra time and also money on that card? But when prices are a lot cheaper, you can look at it from the perspective of, okay, I'll get, let's say 110 versus 2 9s. Does the math add up where it's worth it? Okay, that's worth it on that side of things. That's the worst case scenario. And really start running numbers to determine what cards to send in or not.
Yeah. Basically, I'm not a big submitter, and that was just because of the fact when I started, the prices for submitting was crazy, especially with PSA, which was the hobby darling as far as grading is concerned. So it was always, okay, let me just wait. So I got a ton of stuff that I'm ready to send. And finally now the prices came down $18 a piece. So you really can't beat that. So at the National, when I was over there, I collected some of the Stranger Things cards from that vending machine that they had. So I was able to go ahead afterwards. I finally completed a set. It's about 18 cards and then the redemption card. So I just sent all those to PSA in a submission with cousin Tony. So yeah, I mean, this is the first time, like I said, because I just been waiting, but I think it's awesome, especially for PSA, because SGC has been very competitive with their pricing for a long time, and PSA was lagging behind. So now that PSA, like I said, the hobby darling, when it comes to the grading, they get the best bang for your buck in that. For doing it for $18, I think you really can't beat that.
Ryan, how do you decide who to send to?
Honestly, it depends on the card right now. So more like ultra modern stuff, I send to PSA because I've noticed that type of market loves the ultra modern cards. Now, if it's vintage, it depends on like the era. Pre-war right now, SGC and PSA go for about the same amount of money. Vintage wise, like 50s through 70s, Mantle still has a premium with PSA, but other stars and like mid-end players, well, I wouldn't say mid-end, but like mid-end Hall of Famers, they're starting to become equal on it. But like the certain names like Mantle still outsells on the PSA slab side of things. So I look at it from that perspective. I think right now, like accuracy wise, SGC has been a lot closer. Like when I send in things like what I'm kind of expecting grade wise, I've been pretty close to SGC. Sometimes with PSA, it's kind of all over the board. But right now, like the market still wants a PSA slab. So I kind of use that approach to it. But also like right now, I figure the wait time on stuff. Like, do I want something in faster, like a week or 2 weeks, or am I okay waiting on a card for, I don't know, 2 to 3 months? So I kind of try to factor in all those different types of things. Like, do I need this immediate cash or can I wait on it? Like some of the ultra modern stuff, I mean, that kind of has to go through PSA just because of the SGC prices, unfortunately, right now. I wish they were the same, but that's what the market's at.
Do you have a preference who you send it to? If it's for your PC?
It was funny because I was not going to send it to PSA. We were ready to send it to SGC, and it's for my PC, the Stranger Things and a couple other things that I had gotten. But as soon as the prices dropped, I was like, it does make sense to go ahead and send it to PSA. So it's not really, I mean, the preference is always PSA, but the prices were too ridiculous. So now that it's comparative, I mean, to me, yeah, it's a no-brainer, especially for the PC. Now, if you're in the flip game, obviously SGC is the way to go. You're going to get it back quicker, and they're gaining respect, as each month goes by. So, it's really what you want to do with it.
No, what I was going to say, what I do wish is like the grading fees were under $10 again. I think that's what they really need to be, because like, I know it's a win at $18, but like, if you think about it 2 years ago when things were under $10, and I get it's not going to be as feasible right now, especially with like production costs all across the board, plus all the new hires that all these companies have, and I'm sure technology that they've been innovating as well. But I mean, the closer that we can get to $10 is better for both the collector and also the flipper. I mean, for set builders, right? Like, let's say you're going after a top set that has 500 cards. Now you're going to be paying 500 times $20 versus 500 times 10. So an extra $500 with all that grading. I mean, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
All right, let me jump in and give a couple hellos. We got Jeremy Lee. Hello, Jeremy. We have Zach and Porter. Always good to see you guys. Logan. Logan thinks that Ryan looks like Harry Carey. So he wants you to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game."
Unfortunately.
Sports Card Show wants to know who's going to Chantilly.
Chantilly Saturday.
Are you making it, Ryan?
Saturday, in and out.
Yeah, I'm still not sure. I'll be at Brigandi's Thursday night in New York if anybody will be there. All right, I think get caught up on the hellos there. CSG is my favorite slab of the big four from Sports Card Live. So what do you guys think out of the big four? If it wasn't on resale value, just on slab alone, what do you like the look of?
I prefer BGS, Beckett. I mean, I like the subgrades. I like the thick slab. I mean, that's just my preference. I've always, gravitated towards those. Just gives it that, I don't know, like makes it look important to me. That type of the way it's slabbed up.
So
I think I know what Ryan's going to say. Ryan,
either SGC or CSG. I like the black inserts on them. I do wish CSG did like other stuff with more tobacco cards and such, like kind of like SGC does with the slabs. But I do like how crystal clear the CSG slabs are. I think that is definitely a bonus. And they kind of like, I believe they have magnets in there, so like stacking them are really, really easy too.
How important are subgrades in general to you guys? If it wasn't a cost difference, how much would you like to have that on the slab?
I mean, I really do prefer just to see exactly what with PSA, you're going to go ahead and you're going to get your best bang for your buck as far as resale value, but you have no real idea what, they looked at and what the corners are. You either get a 10, you get a 9 or an 8. With the subgrades, obviously you're going to get a little bit of things. So even if you can get like a pristine 10 or just 10s across the board and a 9.5, you know exactly what the card is, and you can work your price with that. So if it was across the board, if PSA would ever at any point in time have subgrades, I think that'd be it's a wrap, it's end game. But obviously they don't do it for a reason. So
I think right now the hobby's focused on like a solid primary grade rather than the subgrades. I mean, each grade itself is going to be subjective, whether a card grades out as 6, 7, 8. And then you look at the subgrade side of things. I mean, someone could say like edges are going to be like a 5.5 or corners are a 5. Another grader could say it's a 4 or a 4.5. I mean, grading is such a subjective process. I think in general, just having even like a solid grade is. So keeping at that level is fine, but just let the collector determine, whether or not they like the card.
Yeah. Have you guys noticed maybe it's a function of BGS being the main subgrader, but vintage doesn't get subgrades typically? Right. I think that's something interesting, and I wonder what that would do if PSA had done subgrades over the last 30 years when you're comparing two cards together. Which, I mean, can you imagine, Ryan, if you were shopping with subgrades on vintage cards?
On the vintage side things, it's tough because like I look at eye appeal itself for my own collection and would just prefer making sure the card's authentic. And then the grade does matter for the resale side of things, but there's cards that are 3s that look nicer than 4s or 5s.
Mm-hmm.
And like new grading is much tougher than old grading. I mean, there's countless examples on the pre-war side of things. I mean, even the Hannes Wagner that's up for auction right now, that's like a 1.5. That got sent in right now. That's a 1 all day long. There's no way that gets a 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not doing Stranger Things and you're doing stuff for an investment down the road,
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to put some money into something, who are you grading? PSA?
Yeah, all day. PSA. Really, there's no question. Obviously, SGC has come a long way, and obviously with the vintage, it's hit or miss when it comes to that. But for the modern, all day PSA, you can't argue that. Just the way, especially the way the market's been in the last 2 years, and anybody that's come in new, that's what they know. And a lot of these grading companies have a lot of work to do to get there. There's plenty of other ones that are out there. They have nicer looking slabs or the subgrades or this, that, and the third. But right now, the king is PSA. So they got a lot of work to do if they want to, get on top of them.
Did they have to drop their prices to stay competitive, Ryan? Or do you think they would have lost some market share?
I think they definitely needed to. I think they would have lost some of the market share because now you're looking at, was it $18 across the board now for even SGC if you send in 50 cards or something like that. So I kind of like how SGC does it, where they're forcing the individual now to send in 50 cards. It's kind of like you're a group submitter in a sense, so they get that little bit of a discount. But also, it's like if you're going to force 50 cards versus PSA, which do they have a minimum? I think it's 20 cards or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it depends if it's Collectors Club or through.
Yeah, you get to be in Collectors Club, and it's also 20. But SGC, you don't have to. So it's smart from SGC's side because now people are going to send in those additional cards compared to where PSA is at. But we'll see where those wars go after. Also, with like SGC not upcharging people on the modern side of things, I believe they still do upcharge on vintage, but they already have that market share. So they're definitely trying to get some higher end modern stuff in their slabs.
All right. Well, moving on from grading, as we're talking about selling cards, eBay remains the number one platform across the world for selling in general. Article out this week, out of the top 100 worldwide sellers of any category, 4 sports card companies broke the top 100 in biggest volume across the world in every category. So I think we can probably go around and name our favorite eBay sellers, but it's Comsey, Probstein, Greg Morris, and Burbank are the 4. So those 4 sold, I think it was 2.6 million cards in the last 12 months on eBay.
Wow.
So that, just to give a market size, Ryan, I know you do a ton of cards for an individual person. Okay. How far away from 2.6 million cards a year on eBay would you be?
When I pick up anywhere between 30 and like 75 cards, and I tend to sell all those each week. So, even if if I went to a card show every single weekend, I'd be under 5,000 cards a year that I'm selling and moving. But I don't focus on a lot of the cheaper stuff. I try to focus on at least like $50 plus. I mean, there are a lot of people that is still cheap, but like not dollar cards or quarter cards like some of those other bigger sellers do. But that type of stuff moves. There's a huge audience for it.
Oz, do you use any of the to buy or sell? Do you use any of those companies?
I'm not a big seller. I obviously buy the slabs by itself. Usually, I prefer the auctions. So going with Probstein and things like that. So, but not.
You're part of that. You're part of that 2.6 million.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you guys prefer when a company uses eBay or going through their own site? Like a PWCC model versus going through eBay?
So I think like from ease of use, I think most people have like an eBay app on their phone. So when you're searching stuff or have safe searches, you have to go there. There's a ton of auction houses out there. So you're going to have to scour. Like one thing I've been starting to do is build out a spreadsheet of all the different auction houses and when they have their listings ending. So that way I can go and actually see when these auctions are. Otherwise, I'm going to forget.
Yeah. And that's the thing. There's so many auction houses and different platforms that you can go to. So there's opportunities there all day long, but you have to put in the work. And again, do people have all the time to go ahead and put out spreadsheets and do all this? If you're doing it for a living, that's one thing. But if you're working constantly, and eBay is just the way to go.
I mean, when you think about 2.6 million cards, that's sold. The listed number must be however many times that. I think even if you're looking for a specific card, it's overwhelming. I had with me, let me see if I can find it. And I don't want to see if I can not show the name of the company here, but this was one auction catalog. And that was one of 2 catalogs for one auction.
Wow.
Is that Heritage or REA?
It's a major company. But the point is to go through the volume of stuff that's out there. I mean, when I saw that number, and those are just eBay cards. So what are we exposed to on a daily basis in product that's available to purchase through auction houses, through PWCC, through eBay? If you're in the hobby right now, are we taking in more sources, of places to buy than ever before? Is it better? Is it worse? What do you guys think?
I think it's obviously the amount of places that you can purchase cards from. It's pretty ridiculous. There's so many places that you can go to go ahead and purchase these cards. But then again, as a collector, sometimes you just have a narrow focus and you go to what's ever easier. And like I said, you can put in the work and you can go to all these auction houses or these other platforms and you can make a killing, because you can't be everywhere at all times. And same, like I said, the collectors have become real. It's become habit to go to eBay, and that's where most eyes are. So if you were to go ahead and start looking at these other places, I know a particular collector that I know, a buddy of mine, he's doing that and he's making a killing on cards because people are they don't have the eyes on these other platforms.
So he's buying on other platforms and selling on eBay?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So, you go to the places where there's not a lot of eyes to buy them, and then you put them on where all the eyes are. So you're getting them really low on these other things because people aren't looking. There's certain, people, they prefer PWCC and, all these other ones. But, a lot of us, we just got lazy and we're like, okay, eBay, boom. That's the first thing you do. Easiest app. You know how to work it. And then it's showtime.
Somebody in the comments mentioned MySlabs.
MySlabs as well.
I've had mixed experience with MySlabs. I kind of love the format. I like the pictures. I have not seen as much traction on the buying side. What have you guys had an experience?
So I'm kind of biased a little bit because I do help out MySlabs a little bit with counterfeit side of things. So I don't want to fully say everything on that side, but like I have bought cards from their platform and sold stuff. I mean, with the cheaper fees, it does help, but I don't show any bias on that.
Sure. Oz?
I bought a few cards from them. Really don't have too much info as all the ins and outs, but again, it's another platform that's there. There's so many things. If you did the due diligence to go ahead and see, okay, bang, 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 you get out a spreadsheet and you look for a specific card and you look for the best price. And you can do that if you have enough patience and the time to do it, and you'll make a killing. And then, like I said, go ahead, put that puppy right back on eBay, and it's gonna do it.
We have a comment here from a Johan Newman. He says, "I love MySlabs."
Johan Newman.
Appreciate the comment there. So let me ask you guys: if you were to guess out of the top 100 eBay sellers in the world, how many of those would be sports cards? I mean, does 4 seem like a lot, a little?
I think that seems about right. I mean, because eBay is such a hobby site, people, I mean, I'm sure if we looked at video games or comics, they also probably had 4 or 5 big sellers on that side of things. And there's probably some other niches that we're not even talking about here. Oh, duh, of course they're going to be on there. But I mean, it seems about right. I'm sure there's a few other people that just missed the top 4, possibly. That could have been that 101 through 199 range too.
Like other teams receiving votes in the college football poll.
Yes,
exactly.
Oz, when you're shopping, what do you like in a good site? What makes a site a good shopping experience for you?
just being able to see everything, a good description, ease, how easy it is to go ahead and move around and to get, searching, being able to search and pull up the things right away and get as much volume that you're looking for to be able to go ahead and compare. And then of course, just past sales and things like that. So it's just basically the ease and being able to get all the information that you need. And to me, I'm sure there's others out there, but eBay definitely, it checks all those boxes when it comes to purchasing.
How many sites do you guys check before you make a purchase over $100?
No, I don't even really check, to be honest with you, because I kind of know where like a value of a card is and whether or not I want to buy it.
Is that true modern and vintage?
Well, I mean, I'd say like 95% of what I buy is vintage rather than.
Which is why I'm asking for that other 5%.
I mean, I tend to just buy a card.
Okay.
See, he's a cheat code. You really can't.
Hey, you know what? It's a much better system if you can do it.
Yeah.
Oz, are you a 130 point, check everything, make sure you...
Every once in a while, not, I'd say if it's more than $500, then yes. But for the most part, I check a My Slabs. I'll check an eBay, PWCC. But that's pretty much it.
Sorry, when you asked the question, I thought you were saying like if you're comparing prices of a card compared to like different sites, like if a card was listed on eBay or the card was listed on like ComC or My.
Yeah, I'm saying if you're going to make a purchase, how much research do you do? Yeah.
Yeah, I do research the values on it. I don't know everything on top of my head, especially without the market. I thought you were talking about like if you find a card on like eBay or if you're checking like an auction house and all those.
Ryan, we all believed you. I would have just.
Yeah. You're like, I don't need that.
I wish I had that ability, man. You know how much easier card shows would be.
I was saying, if you maybe that's the glasses. Maybe he's got the Google glasses with the instant prices. So how many? With that, you don't have to name the companies if you don't want to. But how many sites do you check if you're making a sizable purchase, however you define that?
I mean, I usually check like 2 or 3 different sources. So, I mean, the quickest way I always check is either like eBay Solds or like 130 Point. If I do want more data, I do sometimes use Market Movers. They don't have all the vintage cards that I need, unfortunately, but at least I like to see some trends. Like, so that way I can see historical data rather like 130 Point and eBay Solds just show you what the last sales are.
Okay. So I don't know. I know we got some football fans. Unfortunately, I was an Eagle fan, but we're letting him stay on this episode. This time of year, we got baseball in the playoffs. Football's kind of, I can't believe, already a quarter through the season, which is unbelievable. Hockey, tonight's opening night or last night, and that's starting up. And this time of year, what are you buying? What are you selling? What's the sales cycle in the fall? How about for you, Oz?
I mean, if you're trying to buy football now, I think you missed the boat. You can pick up some quarterbacks if you want, but the prices are going to be a little bit crazy, especially if you're trying to get the people that are hot right now, like say MVP Jalen Hurts. But why does everybody laugh when I say that?
I think it's MVP Josh Allen. But
all I know, we're 5-0. That's all I know. But if you want to get, and the same thing with baseball, obviously it's the playoffs. So if you had somebody like you wanted to get an Aaron Judge or somebody like that, you're going to be paying a nice premium. Hockey, it's still early on in the season. Basketball, we're in the preseason right now. So if you're interested in basketball, you can go ahead and get in a little bit early. But I think, football right now, like I said, you can get into it, but you'll probably be paying a lot more if you were to go, been a little bit smarter and jumped on it a lot earlier in the preseason or even before that.
Would you be selling Jalen Hurts at a peak right now or hold?
Oh, yeah. Russell Wilson's teared it up. Yeah, definitely. Jalen Hurts right now, you never know when that shoe is going to drop. I'm hoping it never does. We go undefeated, but obviously that's a pipe dream. But the way he's playing, he's really surprised me. Tua unfortunately got hurt. Tua was on another tear. His team was doing very well. You got the regulars like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Those guys are just crazy. I don't know if you watched yesterday's game with Patrick Mahomes and the things that he does. They're down 17-0, and it's just like that. He's back in the game, and 27 points, no problem. So, I don't know. Like Jalen Hurts, bro, he's definitely doing his thing. So we got to see what happens.
Ryan, I find personally that even in vintage, out of season baseball, prices do take a little bit of a softening. People get a little bit distracted. Do you have any seasonal change? Since you are 95% vintage.
Honestly, this stuff is still moving for me. Right now I have a good customer base that are always asking for certain cards, so I'm lucky on that side of things. But when cards haven't been selling, I've noticed that some like raw or lower graded mantles have been moving a little bit slower than they have in like the last 6 months or so. I used to post any mantle that hasn't been claimed and they would sell right away. Now some of the mantles take like a week or two to sell.
Do you think it's seasonally related? Like in a month from now, do you think the prices on those mantles will come down? Or do you think it'll just be the volume that stays down?
I think it could be both. Right now, at least in my opinion, I think mantle cards are overvalued, especially like since they've had the sales of the 1952 tops going crazy. Everything else rose with it for a while, but that's just not going to stand. The 52 tops isn't a super rare card, and that price is going to go down. I think if that price goes down, the rest of it, other mantle cards will follow as well. I mean, compared to where mantle prices are to like a Maze or a Clemente or Aaron right now, it seems just way too high. And I know it's been that historically, but it's really grown over like the last year or two.
So do you think the other cards are going to move up towards the mantle, or just the mantle is going to come down and those cards are going to remain like the Clemente?
I think everything will go down a little bit, but I think mantle will see a little bit more like a faster decline. But I mean, obviously it's not going to go to zero. There's such a big collector's base for mantle cards or vintage cards in general, Hall of Famers and household names, that there's such a strong base out there that will buy the cards when they go down. But I do see a decline coming. Anyone that's vintage never goes down, they have no idea what they're talking about.
Oz, do you have a particular vintage player that you collect?
Not that I collect, but that I'm interested in collecting.
Do you know anybody who likes?
I'm thinking Willie Mays. Like, I wanted to get your thoughts on it, Ryan. Like Willie Mays, what are your thoughts? Do you think he's gonna slowly creep up towards mantle prices, or just remain where he's at, little by little? What do you think if he were to pass away, say for example?
So what happens in vintage cards, as sad as it is, if someone passes away, you're going to see an immediate spike. A lot of people sell their stuff. People go out there, oh, I don't have a Willie Mays card, and they'll buy it. And then over the next 6 months, the card comes crashing back down. So like if you look at what happened with Hank Aaron cards, he passed away. Those card prices skyrocketed. Like even if you're a lifelong collector, sell your stuff, because another 6 months, another year, you will buy that card, if not a nicer version of that card. Same case with Bob Gibson. Bob Gibson passed away. Prices skyrocketed. Then if you look over like the last year, 2 years of Bob Gibson stuff, it's been steadily declining, going back to his level before he passed away. After that, like it might go down a little bit lower, and you're steady 2 to 3% every single year, which is historically done with vintage cards.
I think there's also an impact when you get that title greatest living player. And there's only one or two, every generation that wear that. And those guys, I think, are always in kind of their own category. And I think Willie Mays certainly, is that category. I think Sandy Koufax has to be on the short list of greatest living players. But if we're talking underrated greats of all time, that could take mantle off that perch. Is it Jackie? Is it Willie? Is it Hank Aaron? Ryan, is there anybody?
Anyone that could take off mantle prices, it would be Jackie Robinson. But the problem with the Jackie Robinson is if you look at the 49 Leaf or the 49 Bowman, they just aren't as like prevalent in the minds of a modern collector. Modern collector knows the 52 top set, thinks it's the first top set, which it's not, and goes, that's the Holy Grail card. It's a rare Mickey Mantle card, which is not rare. But like that's what the modern collector thinks, and that's why they're going to gravitate towards that card rather than a Jackie Robinson, which those are rare cards.
But the 52 tops Jackie's beautiful.
Well, I'm talking about his earlier cards with Bowman and Leaf.
I'm just saying in general, for the market, I could see him being a player that people could collect as many years as they could.
Well, yeah, they have been for a while too. He's definitely up there. I mean, if you're talking about top 5 like vintage baseball names, Jackie has to be in that list of like collected players, especially in the 50s.
So
He's
you think Jackie Robinson over Willie Mays?
yes.
Interesting.
For cards.
Yeah.
Now, if I had a team, I would take Willie Mays number 1.
So why is that? Is it just because
Willie Mays was a better player? If you look,
no, as far as the card wise, is it just because that's what the hobby has deemed,
correct.
popular? Okay.
Is it scarcity and social impact, Brian?
It's a more popularity contest. Mickey Mantle being for the face of the New York Yankees, being the poster child of Topps cards with his 1952. That's the reason why his cards are always expensive. Everyone wants to have a Mickey Mantle in their collection, although he was not the best player in the 1950s. I'd much rather have Willie Mays on my team.
It's weird.
Mantle,
but the hobby could be weird sometimes.
No, so like Mantle, in my opinion, like I'd rather have Willie Mays on my team. I'd rather have Stan Musial on my team. I'd rather have Ted Williams on my team before Mantle.
So Oz, who's your list?
Best all time?
Well, I know you said this is weird, so
I'm just saying, as far as what the hobby can, deem, you're basically saying Willie Mays was the man when it came to playing baseball, but yet the hobby says, well, no, Mickey Mantle's the man.
The hobby's a popularity contest.
Right.
I ran data on it a while ago because I was curious, like, why are better players undervalued? And it's based off a popularity score. I mean, look at pitchers like in baseball. Greg Maddux, top 10 pitcher, but his prices are super cheap. You can even find his Tiffany's really affordable. I mean, it just popularity versus like a Chipper Jones. If you look at his Desert Storm or also his Tiffany card, they're super expensive. Why is Chipper Jones so much more expensive than Greg Maddux? Well, Chipper Jones was a lot more popular.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, do those narratives, do they tend to change over time? The older we get, with Mickey Mantle and the way with Willie Mays, we know who was a better ball player, but for certain reasons, obviously Mickey's on top. But as the years go on, is that going to change, or is this always going to be that way?
I think it's always going to be that way because you can even look at the pre-war side of things. Players like Tris Speaker or Mel Ott or Jimmy Fox. I mean, I'll give you a comparison between Mel Ott and Jimmy Fox. Jimmy Fox cards outsell Mel Ott. He's a lot more popular than Mel Ott as well. But if you look at advanced statistics and based off the different leagues that they were in, Mel Ott was the better player, but Fox easily outsells him. I mean, even look at a player like Tris Speaker, who would, in my eyes, is borderline top 10 player. Like, his prices are nowhere near other players. Like, I'll give you an example, Ty Cobb or like a Cy Young or a Christy Mathewson or Walter Johnson. Way cheaper, but still had a really phenomenal career.
All right, we got some comments here. Griffey's still the greatest all time. Nolan Ryan, talking pitchers. Nolan Ryan, outside of his rookie card and maybe his second year, his stuff falls off the table pretty quickly.
Not really. 70 and
his 80s.
Well, I mean, you also look at his 1993 Finest Refractor. It's super popular. He had some autograph cards that are super popular. But his 71 Topps Black, very expensive if you find that in high grade, among other Hall of Famers, but it's still an early card. And then his 1970 is a high number, and that's also it tends to be expensive. So you're looking at 68, 69, 70, and 71. That's a pretty good player run. And his 72 is decently expensive, too.
Sounds like you watched the Nolan Ryan documentary.
I did not.
I was told to watch it because I think he's overrated. Zach and Porter say, I could build a home in Maddox and Randy Johnson dime box finds. Very underappreciated.
I mean, Randy Johnson, literally a top 5 pitcher, I'd argue. Maybe top 5, top 10, depending on if you count some of the pre-war players that just had so many more opportunities to pitch than modern pitchers. I say modern, he's not really technically modern, but like, look how cheap his upper deck rookie card is compared to Ken Griffey Jr. And if I was a GM, I'd rather have Randy Johnson on my team than Ken Griffey.
But pitchers always go for less in general. I mean, that's part of this. Not always, right? I know.
But yeah.
There's a skill.
Yes, I'd agree. So, like, the very bottom of the totem pole is relief pitchers. Then you have catchers. Then you have starting pitchers. Our hobby just does not favor pitchers right now.
That goes back to your point. So when you look at other sports, like if you're buying football, Oz, what positions are you buying?
Quarterback. You know, if I'm investing in the football, it's quarterback, and that's it. I don't really mess with football just because I always talk to cousin Tony about it. It's like I'm a purist, so I'm really into, you know, the best running backs, the best receivers, all around, the best defenders. But it doesn't make sense because nobody cares about that. They care about the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allens, you know, the Jalen Hurts. But you know, my thing, getting back to the baseball though, Barry Bonds, is he ever gonna get traction? I mean, I don't know what's his card market, if any.
Oh, there goes another hour.
I haven't but his Tiffany card is definitely up over the last 2 years. His Tiffany rookie card, which is definitely one of the grail cards of the 1980s. I do think he does make the Hall of Fame one day because there's enough veterans committees out there that will go, all right, well, he was the best player of the era. Let's put him in the Hall of Fame. I think he goes in, and then the card market goes crazy over Barry Bonds stuff. I think there's a lot of hesitation right now because he's not in the Hall of Fame. Once he makes it, you're going to see it. But I think it's going to be kind of like when I was talking about earlier, how someone passes away. I think you're going to see an immediate spike. Bonds prices go through the roof, and then it comes crashing back down after like 3 months or so, like when the talk goes around. But brings back to the point, it's all popularity contests at the current times. Sell when someone's starting to become popular, buy when they're not popular.
So you're saying invest in Barry Bonds. And the gentleman just mentioned Pete Rose. What are your thoughts on him?
Pete Rose will not make the Hall of Fame while he's alive. That's the unfortunate part. I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, but right now, I think he's pretty hated from a lot of people. And
I will say anybody who's met Pete Rose does not like Pete Rose.
Yeah.
And that's hurting him as much as anything that I think he was punished for in reality, as far as the Hall of Fame goes. Now, let me ask you guys another question. Prospecting, more and more in basketball and hockey and football, not just baseball anymore. Are you guys finding prospecting far more on the rise? And it's the cycle of production throwing that off, specifically in football, when I'm buying Trevor Lawrence rookies right now.
I think prospecting has always been alive in the hobby, even through like the 1980s. I mean, look at people like Don Mattingly, who's really highly touted prospect. And there's so many prospects that never really panned out as well. But as like a buying opportunity, at least from what I've seen so far, and I need to do a better job because there's a lot of opportunities there. But buy a prospect when they're out of the like top 25. If you think they have a chance of making the top 10, right? When they make the top 10, sell when you have the hobby hype. Like you make more money now selling a player before they even get their first major league at bat, which is crazy, right? Like think about it. You're prospecting someone that is in AA or AAA, and those cards are going for more than like a Mickey Mantle card or a Ted Williams card. But there's so many people hoping that they're the next great thing. They're going to spend all this money and then wait 2 or 3 years when they're a backup player or just like an average player in baseball. Look how many people that are in the top 10 year after year are still in the league. Very few. Or like perform at that level that everyone expects them to.
Well, I think people forget that there's a pre-hype price bump on almost every major player and occasion right before they get called to the major leagues, right before they hit, the 700th home run, right before this, right before that. The second that moment happens, prices go back down. Joe Burrow spiked last year, the week before the Super Bowl. Literally on the day of the Super Bowl, his prices started going down before the game started. I mean, it's so unbelievably sick, and this gets back to the thought of our hobby, that we're more excited about being excited than we are, at the results.
Yeah, being the smartest guy in the room, the "I told you so" effect. You're like, see, I was in this way before anybody else.
And that's a great point, Ryan. You talk about prospecting. I love as we've talked about going to minor league game. I love baseball prospecting. It's separate from a lot of the other stuff I do. To me, that's some of the best fun in the world is, seeing these guys young and then watching them grow and develop and actually, following them as players. But you're right. If there's money to be made, it's selling them well before the majors. Adley Rutschman was selling for much higher right before his call up than he would be right now.
And he had a good year too.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing.
Yeah, that's the funny thing with our hobby. He had a great year from a catcher's perspective, and no one cares. They already made their money off of him, and they're going to go on to the next catching prospect.
Let's see. Death didn't help Joe Jackson. I will say Joe Jackson didn't have a Bowman Chrome #1, or it might have. Here we go with my favorite subject. Nobody's going for more than somebody's. That's from the Cousin Collectibles podcast.
Cousin Tony.
Tony Gwynn, very undervalued. I think we can agree that we're going to look back at Tony Gwynn, I think, one day, and especially when we look at the defensive statistics and the shifts and are able to define some of that data for him a little bit better. He is probably very underrated. What happened to Rookie of the Year Kyle Lewis? Well, let's put that all into one category. I call these the bounce back prospects. So the Joe Adells, the Lou Bobs, the Kyle Lewises, the Wander Francos, all these guys that come up with all this hype, and then So out of the category, who do you feel good about moving forward? Jonathan India, another good one.
So, I'll just talk about historical stuff and that, because I bought into a player like that, Manny Machado. Manny Machado came up with a ton of hype, and then first few years did okay. At least this is my remembrance. I'm not looking at his stats or anything top of my head, but his prices went down a lot, and I bought a lot of his stuff hoping okay, Manny Machado is going to MVP, or he's going to hit these milestones. And year after year, he puts up 5+ WAR. He's doing phenomenal in San Diego. Did better than Tatis. And guess what? His prices aren't too expensive. You can still find Machado stuff really affordable. And
I'm in Baltimore. You're preaching to the choir. He is so underrated.
Yes, right? And career-wise, on track right now. And obviously it's impossible to predict how a player will do in the future. We don't know injuries. We don't know players' work ethic outside of the game. From the perspective of as fans. So, looking at stats, I think he's going to end up with over 80 WAR, or wins above a replacement, which the average Hall of Famer is anywhere between 60 and 65. Should be a lock there. And maybe he has a ceiling around 100 WAR. So 100 WAR is phenomenal. But there's no hype around Manny Machado cards right now, and people aren't going crazy over him because he's not a young prospect. I have a bunch of Mike Stanton cards that I bought a while ago, rookie year, quarter each, 50 cents each, bought cheap autos, stuff like that. 500 of them. Do I think he has a chance of making 500 home runs one day? Yes, and that's the only way his cards are going to go up in value. As crazy as it sounds, he could hit 40, 50 home runs every single year. No one cares because he's not 20 years old or 21 years old as a prospect.
So do people still care about Mike Trout? Is he still the man, or is there a new Mike Trout?
He's the guy right now. But Juan Soto is the next Mike Trout in a sense, but he didn't have a perfect season in the eyes of people that bought into him, and his card prices have gone down a ton.
Well, this gets back to popularity. Is Machado hurt by popularity?
People hate him, so he's not popular.
Now, in baseball,
Aaron Judge, is he the most loved guy right now?
He is right now. I wouldn't say number one, but because of the 61 home run chase, he's in everyone's minds. They kept showing him on ESPN during college football games. When you start showing people all these clips of someone, guess what starts happening? Oh, I need to have an Aaron Judge card in my PC. And you saw his cards skyrocket. Guarantee you in the offseason, Aaron Judge cards will be going down at least by 50%.
So who's the face of baseball in 3 years, Oz?
In 3 years? Yo no sé. I don't know. Because I don't prospect. Huh?
But I'm saying, is it Shohei? Is Trout?
Is it? I don't know if Shohei can keep that up. It sounds good. He's been putting up ridiculous numbers to be able to pitch and bat the way he does, but man, the prospecting in baseball, my thing is too with baseball, does winning championships, does that not come into effect? Is that not even a thing in baseball?
It's not a thing. In basketball, I've heard collectors always talk about, oh, they need to win championships in basketball. Baseball, there's so many players that impact the game, and there's so many random opportunities and outcomes in the game where it's a player can only do so much for their team. Look at the Angels. They have Ohtani and they have Trout, and they can't even play playoffs. Think about that for a second. Two players that people consider 1 and 2 or maybe 2 and 3 in baseball, and they can't even make the playoffs. So baseball is much more than one player or even two players on a team. And are you going to penalize someone like Mike Trout or Ohtani for being surrounded with players that couldn't help them into the playoffs versus basketball, where it's 5 people on court for basketball for each team?
Well, I think baseball is also impacted more by city and market size than any other sport.
It is. I mean, look why Yankees always outsell other people.
And somebody in the comments here, lots of young guns in Baltimore, but does playing there hurt their value? So, as a Baltimore representative here, I guess I'm going to say no. Baltimore is clearly the best sports city in the country. And it would be like saying, obviously, Kenny Pickett's value goes down when he's drafted by Pittsburgh. I mean, you have to understand the market. So when you have a player that goes to a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, their value is going to go down. The Orioles, they're a young and up-and-coming team. When they grow together and you have Gunnar Henderson and if Jackson Holiday comes up and Adley Rutschman, that's actually, I think, creates excitement.
So, I mean, the case in point is also like Wander Franco. Like, he plays for the Rays. Like, no, I'm a big Rays fan, but no offense, like no one cares about the Rays outside of like maybe 40 people in Tampa. So the fact that Wander Franco cards are super expensive, but also goes to the point too of like how expensive. What's the guy's name? Number one prospect from the Yankees. I'm having a brain fart real quick.
Jason Dominguez.
Jason Dominguez, yeah. Like if Jason Dominguez played for the Tampa Bay Rays or played for Baltimore Orioles, would we see a superfractor go for as much as it did?
Oh, never. And I'm going to say it should, and I'll say it shouldn't have gone for that even on the Yankees. So that, Anthony Volpe. I mean, if anybody prospects, to prospect on market size also. Finding the Pittsburgh Pirates 12th best guy is typically not as profitable as the Yankees 12th best guy.
The this season, you had all that hype.
Exactly. So Ohtani, I'm just reading some of the comments. Ohtani, then everyone else moving forward. How do you guys like the war when adding pitcher war and hitter war?
I was gonna say it might be a hot take, but the face of baseball in 3 years, we might not even know because it could be in the minor leagues right now, especially with how the young guys are just dominating the game.
Anybody specific?
I don't prospect, so I couldn't tell.
You just throw it, stir the pot, throw it out there.
Why not, right?
I'm gonna throw it out there, but I'm not gonna tell you who it is.
I'm gonna say that I think Gunnar Henderson is next year's Rookie of the Year. So I'll make that my hot take on the home stretch here. Oz, what are you looking forward to in the next month or so, collecting or picking up for yourself?
Well, I'm sticking to a ton of Stranger Things. I'm actually looking forward to Zero Cool coming out with I've been really investing in a lot of alternative markets. My main PC is Allen Iverson, so I'll always be dabbling in those types of cards, the 90s inserts and anything like Flawless and, National Treasures, cards like that with nice patches. But I'm really waiting for that Zero Cool or Stranger Things box to come out. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the show, but me and my daughter, that's how we connect. So she's all about Millie Bobby Brown playing 11, maybe getting one of the autographs on hers and just, trying to build that set when it comes out.
Definitely a good show.
Ryan, where is your itinerary headed?
Well, right now I'm trying to pick up some rare stuff still. I'll show you what I just got in today. Hold on.
Please. His mail's more fun than mine.
I bet.
This is a 46 Propaganda's Montiel of Joe DiMaggio. So this is great. So this is the type of stuff I enjoy because you can't find them at card shows most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do, I'd try to buy it. But they barely come up to market. Like maybe one a year or one every 2 years of some of the Hall of Famers or different things like that pop up. And I wanted a Joe DiMaggio card in my PC. And until I can get his 36 Gaudi or pick up his 37 O-Pee-Chee, this is going to be my Joe DiMaggio card. But things like that, I also have a huge non-sports PC. I try to focus on historical figures or rock and roll bands because that's what I listen to. And so a lot more to go on that side of things, but I love that.
Beautiful.
Oz, you got a question. Do you care if patches are game used versus something else?
You would prefer the game use patches with a lot of the stuff that came out with Panini lately. I don't know if that was just because of the pandemic or whatever, all the patches that they were just getting off racks and throwing them in the cars. The cars are beautiful, but it's really not worth anything. So you definitely want to try to get something that's game used. If I'm going to go ahead and invest in it and it's for my PC, it's definitely got to be that.
To me, there's nothing sadder than reading on the back, this item is not from any specific event or player. I mean, they're almost telling you they went to the team store, bought it. They didn't buy it. They just took it, cut it up in the card.
Pretty much.
That's practically what they're admitting on there.
What was that picture that circulated a few years ago? It was like a football player that had like 10 jerseys on. Something like that, where he's walking around like that.
Yeah.
That's the worst part is they'll call that player worn.
Yeah, that's player worn. That's player worn. It is. He wore it.
I mean, there's videos of guys like putting hats on, taking them off like 100 in a row.
Yeah.
So if anybody's not aware and you are looking to buy patches and cards like that, game worn, player worn, and material are all different things. So make sure you're reading the fine print.
But the new patches that are not recognized, I mean, those patches are sick. So when you see those cards, you're like, oh my God, look at that patch. And then you read the back, you're like, ah.
I was going to say, some of those old patches, they would used to put the jersey on the back and show you. Like, hold on, I might have an example. Pretty sure.
From the actual.
I like when they did the leather baseball patch, where they actually cut out the baseball right on the sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, do you have any sweet spot cutout patches?
So one, but look on the back. They actually show the jersey.
Oh wow!
See, that's cool.
Yeah. Sweet.
Yes. The memorabilia on the front of this card is made of thread and was sourced on Earth. Yes, Jeremy. That is about what they are promising us right now. Sadly.
These are fun.
So I love it. I wish I had one with me. And I was saying the baseball sweet spot cutouts inserts.
Yeah, I don't have any. Oh, I do have one, but they fade. Like the autographs on those are pretty bad with how bad they fade. So I don't recommend keeping them for PC, because if they are on the light or in a showcase, or like even over time without being in light, the autographs are going away. So
I love the natural baseball. I'll let somebody else enjoy the fading years later. I'm going to enjoy the autograph now. To me, it's one of the few things that you can put onto a card that's not uniform. I love the pieces of bat, not the little slivers, but a nice size bat. Even the gloves that I know they were doing for a little while. I'm a little tired of patches.
The old like prime cuts on how they put like the glove, the helmet. That was super cool. I'll just show another patch that I picked up this weekend.
Yeah.
Get this of one of the guys we were talking about is underrated. I don't know how it shows, but
no, Rose Arena is very underrated.
Randy Johnson right there.
Johnson.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Was there any birds hurt in the filming of that card?
It said only one. got caught in the machine.
All right, we are, I think, wrapping it up here. Cousin Oz,
yes,
where can people find you and Tony?
Cousins_collectibles is the podcast. Check us out. Every Monday we release an episode, and I have Cousin Oz, the People's Mailman. That's my IG, so you can hit us up, either one. But yeah, definitely check us out. And then on Thursdays we release the YouTube show. So. And
Ryan, your media empire.
Yeah, so you can check me out on YouTube, Breakout Cards. I'm also pretty active on Twitter and Instagram.
And I will vouch for the fact that these are two of the nicest guys in the hobby. Anytime you run into them, don't be afraid to say hello. They are happy to dork out and talk cards with you. So my pleasure sharing the screen with you guys tonight. I hope John feels better. And hopefully we covered his tracks tonight. And thank everybody for episode 189 and all our special guests that joined us tonight. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.